All right, hello everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I always find interesting as an author of science fiction stuff. There's been a recent development with Voyager 2, the space probe that was sent out in the 1970s. They had to turn off one of its sensor systems. And so I thought it would be fun, real quick, just to go and look at what is still running on Voyager 2. What did Voyager 2 do? What did they just turn off? And, I thought it'd be fun to kind of do a little science thing since maybe I might have some insight there. Anyway, let us head over to the internet where we will see what is up with Voyager 2. All right, so I would figure we would start here with our little history lesson on Voyager 2. I found this article from 2019, July of 2019, that talks about how NASA had just had to shut off systems on Voyager 2 to save more power. The Voyager 2 is powered by 3 of these radioisotope thermoelectric generators. They're basically a bunch of plutonium oxide that generates heat from the radiation of the plutonium that they then transfer that heat into electrical energy. The thing that they had to do was they had to turn off the heating for the cosmic ray instrument. That instrument itself is tested down to negative 49 degrees Fahrenheit, but as of 2019, it was sitting at negative 74 and still working, which is kind of surprising. So Voyager 2 entered interstellar space in 2018, but it's still returning information on how the space environment changed, and it also showed us a lot about what the space environment does as you kind of leave the sun's sphere of influence, if that makes sense. There's actually a lot of structure out there. And you wouldn't think so. You'd think that all these things are so slow moving that they don't really matter, but there's actually some stuff going on. So that was kind of interesting. Later on in 2020, February of 2020, it was reported that Voyager 2 had to shut off all of its stuff and do a scheduled maneuver to calibrate its magnetometer. But there was a delay in the maneuver, which left 2 systems running on high power, which was bad because those radioactive power supplies, they're designed to gradually, or just because of physical reality, they do gradually decrease in power output, and the more they decrease, the less there is to actually spend on actual instruments. But what they ended up having to do was they had to shut off the 5 scientific instruments, and shutting things off that far away when you're 20 light minutes away, and any commands have to take that long to go and come back. It's a pretty dangerous thing to do because, right? If you end up with the antenna pointed in the wrong direction, you just lose control or lose contact with the thing forever, and that's it. But fortunately, it looks like they managed to fix everything eventually. They've got these little thrusters that keep the antenna oriented toward Earth. They managed to keep those working the way they need to calibrate things, and get the get the scientific instruments back running. So back in 2020, there were still 5 scientific instruments running, but this week they've had to shut down one of those 5. So they shut down the plasma science instrument last week, basically, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Both of them are currently in interstellar space, kind of, sorta. They're still within the space of the Oort cloud, because the sun's solar wind outputs fall off faster than its gravitational effects, which is kind of what you expect. The solar wind particles eventually are going to run into kind of a background and crash against that. But Voyager 2 lost one of the 5 instruments that was still running a couple of weeks ago. I went over to Wikipedia, and this article seems like it's fairly well maintained, and it kind of gives us a list of the different stuff that was on there. Most of this stuff was really only useful when Voyager 2 was looking at Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune and Uranus so once they left Neptune, they turned off all the really, really power heavy imaging systems. The radio science system was no longer necessary. infrared interferometer and spectrometer and radiometer were no longer necessary because they were all talking about atmospheric composition and stuff of the planets. The ultraviolet spectrometer also is to look at atmospheric properties, basically by looking for lines in like the emission or reflection of the stuff of the planetary atmospheres. You can tell what's in them, and like if it happens to be in like an excited state or something like that. So once you leave the planets, you don't need that anymore. Interesting note: the photopolarimeter system did not work initially. It was defective on launch, so unfortunately we're never able to really use that. The plasma spectrometer, the PLS, is what got turned off 2 weeks ago. So we're not going to be able to investigate macroscopic properties of plasma ions and measure electrons in the energy range from 5 eV to 1 keV. That's the kinetic energy range because it's not counting the electron mass, which is a 511,000 electron volts. So this is kinetic energy, not total energy. Which is a little bit misleading. I might edit that. The planet, and then for some reason they put all the planetary stuff up here, except for this guy down here, which studies radio emission signals from Jupiter and Saturn. There have been a bunch of like kind of cool, like freaky, like scary games about like radio emission signals from planets recently. I saw a video of one a while ago that looked kind of cool. But yeah, here's the 4 things that are still working. First off, they have a triaxial fluxgate magnetometer, which is a fancy way of saying a device that measures magnetic fields in 3 axes, in three perpendicular axes to get like an X, Y, and a Z. That's kind of cool because you do want to see like when the sun's magnetosphere like curves over and stuff like that. You've got a low energy charged particle instrument which measures energy fluxes and angular distributions of ions, electrons, and the differential energy ion composition. This is probably lower energy than the plasma spectrometer, because a few eV of movement for an electron is a decent amount of kinetic energy. But they call this the low energy charged particle instrument, so maybe it's lower than that. It's also picking up ions as well as electrons, so it gives you more information because you might have like hydrogen ions or protons, or maybe even like some other ions out there, helium perhaps. You've still got working the cosmic ray system, which looks for interstellar cosmic rays, nucleosynthesis of elements and cosmic ray sources. I mean, they're probably overselling it a little bit here. Like, probably it just measures like high energy particles and makes a little pop every time that something goes through it. But like it does help to have those numbers because you can talk about like what the you could see if the cosmic ray system or not system but like density changes as a function of distance from the sun. And then the final thing that's still working is the plasma wave subsystem, which I guess is measuring the magnetosphere as well. So mostly magnetic data we're getting from Voyager 2 now, especially since the plasma spectrometer is closed down. But yeah, it was kind of neat to see all this stuff. All this space stuff I find really fascinating. So just kind of a neat thing to look at. But that's kind of all I have for this. So yeah, Voyager 2 lost an instrument 2 weeks ago. Most of the systems have been shut off to save power. These radioisotope thermoelectric generators are kind of neat. They're plutonium power devices. So, what's the other thing? Oh, there's a little timeline here too, where we actually launched Voyager 2 in 1977, and it finished observations of Neptune in 1989. So 12 years to get out to Neptune. Now it's up at 40 years of continuous flight and operation, and that's not what I wanted to do, but stop it. But yeah, it's now in the heliopause. It crossed the heliopause and has entered interstellar space. They're still taking some cool measurements, and apparently, according to this, in 2023, it overtook Pioneer 10 as the second farthest spacecraft from the sun. So, good stuff. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little look into one of the really cool things that NASA did back when NASA was about getting things into space, and yeah, it's interesting to see how these things have lasted longer than was expected. Kind of a testament to good design, I guess, and a little bit of luck too. We saw that there was one of the devices that got that didn't work from the beginning. So, you know, um, space science is like that. Once it's gone, it's gone, and that's all you got. That's why we had to. That's why the government spent a bunch of money fixing the Hubble. After it went up, because they're like, oh, we screwed up. Ideally the protocols are in place to make it so that doesn't happen, but mistakes, of course, always happen, regardless of protocol. The other thing I wanted to mention was, if you like stuff about the edge of the solar system and stuff like that, I actually wrote a kind of a very short but kind of a cool little short story about the first colony ship, right? And it's called The Fifth. It's a short story. It's available free on my blog. I'll put a link in the description. But I think it's a fun little story with a neat twist at the end. And it's it takes 10 minutes to read or something like that. So it's just a fun little short story. But go check that out if that sounds fun to you. If you enjoyed this talk about Voyager 2, you might find it to be an interesting take. But other than that, I'll just say thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and if you want to help the channel out, if you like what I'm doing, you know what to do. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.